guys. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on transparency and traceability, a really important topic. Today, as your hosts, it's me, Salme, and Sydney. And we will be talking with three coffee professionals on their experiences and the way they work with transparency and traceability. So let me introduce you to Joanna Alm from Drop Coffee Roasters, Suyok from Drift Away Coffee, and Jamie Isaacs from Merit Coffee. So she's having some of internet problems, but we will allow her in when she can figure it out. For now, why don't you guys introduce yourself? So Joanna, you can tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, no, first of all, thank you so much for having me and having, it's really nice to see so many people, 33 participants at the moment. So I'm feeling very honored and happy to be here today. And I'm not sure where most of you are coming from. So I hope we will have time for some spare questions or so, depending on where you're coming from. So I am Joanna Alm. I have a coffee roastery called Drop Coffee, based in Stockholm, Sweden. So pardon my accent, it's very Scandinavian. So, and I'm also been a part of for many years now, first starting up the Coffee Roasters Guild of Europe and then merging it and sitting on the board at Coffee Roasters Guild. And as well, I'm a part on the Sustainability Advisory Council and now nominated for the SA board as well. So yeah, and I'm formally managing director. I'm visiting all of the producers that I'm buying from. I made as a statement 5 years ago, and I have the privilege to work with Caravela in Colombia. So that's me.
Suya, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, I'm Suyok Modi. I'm a co-founder and basically all things related to coffee and roasting and green buying at Drift Away Coffee. We are a direct-to-consumer e-commerce only coffee company. So we basically source coffee from partners like Caravela from all over Central and South America and roast it in Brooklyn and then ship it all over the country, a little bit outside the US. Yeah, I'm very, very honored to be here. Very excited. I've watched a lot of Caravela's farm videos, with the quality managers, farm managers. We've spoken to a few as well. So very excited to do this on a different scale and a different level.
Thank you. Sydney, why don't you tell us a little bit about you for the people that don't know you?
Hi, I'm Sydney, and I'm a lab assistant at the North Carolina Caravela office, and I have I do different social media coffee things. I have a podcast with Sprudge, and I've just been on the final stages of the coffee's lifespan for a while, and so now it's really nice to be able to engage with you all and get to know it from seed to cup. So I'm so excited to be here.
So everyone, we want to know you. We want to know our audience. So I'm going to take a poll for you guys so you can tell us who you are. Let's start. This is important because also part of this content is to create this space where we can share knowledge that's going to be useful regardless of where you are in the coffee industry, and if that you have special questions that are going related to specific parts of the value chain, we can answer those. Okay, let's give it a little bit more of time and we will see what we have. Jamie. Okay. So mostly roasters, then green coffee buyers, baristas, coffee producers, hola a todos, bienvenidos, exporters and importers. Those are our results. That's very interesting. Thank you for joining, everyone. We hope this space creates some questions and answers some others for you. Jamie, do you want to introduce yourself as you just came in? I think she's frozen. Okay, we should start now. So Sydney is going to let you know, guys, how it's the order of the day while I start sharing my screen.
Okay, dokes. So, hi again. And today we're all like super excited to be here with you all talking about traceability and transparency and how it's really the step to a more sustainable future for everyone across the chain. And we are going to share information and talk to the people on the panel so they can share insight and we can as a industry grow and just benefit as a whole. And so we will be asking certain questions and then there will be space for you all to ask questions if you have them as well.
Okay, so let's start. This is what we came for. So, first of all, what is transparency and traceability? There are many different ideas that can be looked for or understood as transparency and traceability. For some, transparency can be information going always both ways. For some others, traceability is about tracking down and analyzing. So a general concept of transparency is basically knowing what the other one is doing without any problem or without any layer. And then a basic concept of traceability is being able to literally track down all of the blocks of the chain with no limitation. We need to understand this in order to go and ask what is transparency and traceability in the different parts of the value chain and how can we use it. So, Joanna, ladies first, why don't you tell us what is transparency and traceability for you and for your coffee business?
No, so transparency, I see very much like what you're touching on, like it's to actually be able to follow all of the footsteps to exactly where the coffee's been, like all of the chain, all of the lines, like you can standardize in how you work as a roaster, that we need to know the wet mill, how how long the coffee is fermented, how long, like it's a lot of things you can log and measure in terms of transparency, like exactly where all the steps in the coffee have been, and that I think been highly important for the specialty coffee industry, that we actually, like, only looking back 10 years ago, we did only talk about maybe like even an origin or a specific mill compared to talking about individual farms. So and follow all the steps and being able to share that, while transparency is very much about, like, if you have a glass, and to be able to, like, see all the important shapes that are in that glass. So in terms of transparency, like you can look at the economical and the environmental and the working conditions, and you can look at a lot of things that are important, like not always pretty, like we're not living in a perfect coffee world, but that's about to see the important shapes and have the Googles on to be able to look at all of those things. And those things, sorry, I shouldn't talk this long on every stuff, but like it's a lot about to, like you can log transparency as well, but a lot about it is to see it transparently.
Yes.
So
Surya, do you have something to add into this concept, or how do you see it from your side of an e-commerce and purchasing, but also selling to the end consumer?
Yeah, yeah. No, I completely agree with what Joanna and you have said. I guess maybe a different lens on it, not necessarily from e-commerce or drift away's perspective, but just, the way I think about it is I feel like traceability is more about the data and like sort of the touch points and like sharing the information about things that are happening, but in a sort of a codified way. um, whereas transparency is more about being able to interpret that data and understand it in the sense of like, why is it important? Why is it important that a coffee was from this farm, or was it fermented for X number of hours? I think I maybe you can hear from what I'm saying, but I have a technology background, so everything is like data and X and Y. So from that perspective, I think of it as like, what is the information, and then sort of how do you understand it. And I think of transparency and traceability from those perspectives. For sure, it's the farm and production side of things, and importing it into the wherever the coffee is being consumed, at least the way the industry is set up now, and the conversation that we're having. But it's 100% also about communicating all of that, uh, both the traceability information but also the transparency information to the end consumer, and more than that, making them care, which I think is like the hardest part, because coffee can be very, very simple for a lot of people, just drink and go, or it can be like slowly enjoy it and understand it, and maybe it won't happen every single time, but maybe if you can do it a little bit, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more, then that's what really matters.
That's really nice. Jamie, do you have something to add?
About transparency and traceability, or how they're used? I don't know how much I missed. Sorry, everyone.
Yes. So what is transparency and traceability, and how do you see it from your part on the chain?
Yeah, well, let me introduce myself first. I'm so sorry for the difficulties, everyone. I'm Jamie Isitz. I'm the green buyer at Merit Coffee in Texas. So yeah, for me, transparency is mostly about just kind of doing what you say you're going to do and sharing information so that you can build trust with your partners. And traceability is more about the clarity of that information, and just kind of giving means to trust and verify.
Really nice. Thank you. So,
Hey, so we all have kind of the same definitions of transparency and traceability, and my next question would be, how is it used in the coffee industry? I know my personal experience, it's used from every aspect, from training to marketing, that I've seen, but how do you all use it in your businesses? Would you like to start, Joanna?
yeah, sure. I think that the traceability is something like even more like, what we're touching on, like that's very like almost like the same every time that we do communicate, like all of those steps we do want in there, while transparency is sometimes like almost trickier to communicate out to the end customer. but it's super important for me as a green coffee buyer. So a lot of, in my setup, I'm using the transparency, like I do transparency reports, for example, and impact reports. And that's a lot more of my individual work within the business and with my like long-term year-on-year projects with a producer or an exporter. But it's not necessarily something that I always communicate the depth of, but I do log it. But that data I do not share in the same way. Yeah, but I think I'm thinking a lot of the 3 different steps in sustainability. Like it's like a 3-pillar that is built on being environmental, economical, and social. And like out from that, I think that like that's the way I'm logging things as well, to make sure like that you're always going to miss something and you're always going to get something wrong, but at least like I have a protocol and I'm trying to log that for my own data, so I know where we together can improve and where we should focus and what we should prioritize at the stage. And in terms of economical, with the ongoing coffee price crisis, like that's a part that I would call transparency rather than traceability. And that's one that I've actually chosen to start sharing, at least say FOB prices or something to acknowledging the issue.
What about you, Jamie?
Did you say Jamie?
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, I liked what you had to say, Joanna, about kind of the 2 sort of sets where you have like the internal data by which you measure yourself and the external story that you tell. For me, I think something that has been really important about using this information has been finding patterns and telling stories with the data that I collect. Because as much as it's important for accountability, there's also a lot of interesting stories to be garnered and teased out of that information as well. And that's kind of how I found that to be very useful in communicating to my customers.
Yeah, that's something that's very, very important. What about you, Suyu? How do you use it in the business that you're in?
Yeah, we're in a different stage in terms of Driftaway, I think, as compared to Drop, probably Merit as well. So we actually have a lot more coffees than traditional roasters in terms of the coffees that we source and roast. We don't do any origin trips because we just couldn't possibly do like 52 trips to 52 different farms at the scale that we're at. Maybe sometime in the future if the volume goes up. So we heavily rely on importers like Caravela for transparency, traceability information. But we definitely, what we try to do is try to learn as much as we can from the importers, conversations, obviously relationships year over year, how is the coffee changing, tasting, and then we sort of develop our own stories. We actually do these YouTube, it's like a YouTube series called Coffee Stories that we create videos, very short explainer videos, 3 to 5 minutes to share with customers. And in the beginning, people were not really watching it as much, but once we got the hang of it and started sort of making it more consistent, people are really big fans of like taking that transparency sort of stories and then the traceability information, which is on a web page for every single coffee, and watching that and understanding it to the point where sometimes in the customer service side of things we get a lot of questions about like, hey, is this coffee from Huila, how is this related to this other one from Cauca, and the one that you had a few months ago, and are they the same producer? And then you have to start sort of setting the context. But those are the types of questions we really love to get from customers, because we feel like that they're actually listening and engaging and understanding, at least to some extent. And then obviously that's feedback for us to improve as well.
Yeah, it is very interesting because, as I mentioned before, everyone is at a different stage. And from this stage, you can picture and highlight the way you want to introduce this topic inside of your company, but also outside to the end consumer. So that is very interesting. Let's go with the next question. So, why is it important to integrate transparency and traceability as guiding principles? Jamie, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think one of the most critical reasons why it's so essential to incorporate into the foundation of your business these principles is it just builds social capital. It builds trust. Like I feel that my interaction and what I put out in terms of this information is as much about wanting producers to want to work with me as it is me to want to do right by them. So yeah, I think the trust that it builds, and also it's important for making better coffee. Like when you close the feedback loop between the consumer or your staff and the farmer and everything in between, then you can really transmit some really valuable and interesting information. Like when you have that connection to everyone in the chain, for example, a farmer or a miller might have no idea how the coffee ages, and there may be something that can be done in terms of practices that could really help that. So yeah, trust and improving quality for sure, the compelling reasons.
Yeah, it is very, very important to understand why to invest on this, because this is an investment for a company. It can be part of your ethos and your um, persona, your criteria, but when you're bringing this inside of a company, it requires time, it requires effort, it requires creating guidelines and structure on uh, is it important? Is it worth it for a company to create these principles and why? So maybe Stuya, you want to step in and tell us a little bit of this?
Yeah, I think my answer is probably going to come from a different place, but hopefully it's helpful. I just feel like it's just, basic uh, information at this point, as especially in the specialty coffee industry. Like, where your apple comes from, because it grows somewhere closer to where you're consuming it. Why would you not know where your coffee comes from? It's just kind of embarrassing that we haven't all these years and decades. So I feel like it's just a very basic component of it should definitely be there, and consumers should demand it. I think because of the history of coffee and hundreds of years of trade that's been going on all over the world, it just hasn't been something that's been valued as much. So it's just something that is changing, and we should be drivers of the change. In fact, I would go even a step further and say that consumption in producing countries is increasing, and the transparency and traceability information that consumers in producing countries should be demanding is even higher, and it should be even more transparent, even more available than something that's shipped thousands of miles away.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very important step, and it is to create this environment where coffee is not just this product that you buy at the supermarket. Or even if you buy it at the supermarket, you are interested in getting to know where does it come from. It is changing, and a little bit of this vision or mindset that coffee just happens and it is just there. And it's part of the long education um, project that specialty coffee has been doing throughout a very long time. Joanna, do you want to comment on this?
Yeah, stop me if I'm talking too much. So, no, but I totally share the opinions. I also would like to highlight that it feels so important. Like, obviously, we're coffee roasters from the beginning. Like, we're not educated in sustainability in terms of importing and exporting, and we're working in so many different countries, and every year it's new politics and new setups, and like it's so little that we do know. So I don't want to say like that any one of us sourcing green coffee knows everything in every country. Like that's the privilege of like why you, Salome, have like such an important job on the ground. Like you actually know how it is in a certain area and in depth, and have a deep understanding in terms of culture, political, power structures, everything, like how it's actually working there. But at least I have it as a goal that I try not to share information that I don't feel that I understand. So I mean, saying that, for example, a drop, I remember like 8 years ago, we had a big thing that everyone just wanted organic coffee. That was like, okay, this is sustainability. We're just looking for organic coffee. And I do think it is important to to work organically if you can. And there are some places where it's working and some places not, but it's never or is rarely in coffee, it's a black or white, yes or no, that works in every single setup. So it's so important to like understand as much as you can of the information that you actually do share. And that's tricky because we are on a learning journey all of the time. So, and I do think it's like, yeah, we do need to share because the industry knows very little about coffee. We do need to work with the prices, work to have a more, like that the whole supply chain is benefiting more, and also showcase how that like how you can make a career in coffee and increase awareness about it is essential to make that happen. So of course, like we don't want to buy a beautiful coffee that where we've been working on many years without sharing it. And also I think it's like in terms of more so that's more traceability, but when it comes to traceability and QC, I find that it's so often working to like get a broader understanding of the complexity and like QC that I think it was Jamie touched on like drying times. And so like, because you really get it's few people understanding as end consumers how complex and expensive coffee is to produce.
Yeah,
so.
definitely.
So, the next question is, do you develop a criteria to select coffees purchased based on companies' traceability and transparency principles? And, I know personally, like the story, I'm always at the end of the story for most of my career. I've been like enjoying the stories that are being told, and because we all love that. And so I'm just interested on like, do you go into your coffee looking for the story, or do you just let the story unfold as you explore? Joanna, would you like to start? Or Jane, whoever would like to start, like, feel free.
I'll give Joanna a break.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, originally I like desperately wanted to have like a firm criterion, like say, this is how much I pay for this quality. This is exactly what I do. I mean, I'm very much like a person who likes to have like clear guidelines for myself, even if I don't necessarily impose them so stringently on other people. But the more over the last 5 years, it's like as I tried to put together a criterion that was relevant for merit and for me, like I just decided, I'm going to stop trying to flatten this complexity. and embrace the fact that it needs to be more holistic and situation based. So for me, like, I kind of I just begin by recording as much information. And I mean, we can talk about, like, my criteria for beginning to work with someone is a lot more based on the person and of course the initial quality of the coffee, whether it's going to work in my program. And we can talk about that more. I know one of the later questions addresses that a bit more, but yeah, I mean, once I have decided like this quality is going to work, I'm going to be able to build a program around this, I just start by recording as much information as I can. And that's, you know, information about the farm, things that I get myself or from someone like Salome or some other intermediary who's helping me gather that information, and also things that we have on our side. So like physical analysis of the coffee, like UV, and all those things like can really be used in an interesting way to stitch things together, to tell stories, to communicate value across the chain. So, you know, I wish I could be more like, this is exactly what we do and published on our site and exactly how we do it. I feel like I'm still in a listening phase, but essentially you know, it's more about the who than the how when I'm beginning a new project.
Yeah, I think that this this is a very interesting part of the conversation, because as you guys were mentioning before, you can have your criteria and your ideas, but nothing is black and white in coffee, and it's very different from country to country. Understanding the cultural background, the environmental background, the cultural bias that you might have, or the people you're working with has, is very important. There are things that are always going to be top and are always going to be critical, but understanding and managing inside of this cultural and this understanding this new country and way of working, because every country has a different structure. It's very important in order to select who to work with, where to work with, and how to work with. So, do you want to add something?
Yes, always. I mean, I agree with everything everybody has said. From just sort of a couple of unique things that we do that haven't been mentioned. Maybe everybody does it as well, but we try. We have a very published list of principles. It's not rules. It's basically, you know, these are the types of things that we think about when we source coffees. I would say when we started off, there was a lot of experimentation, but now we just focus on two criteria. Number one is quality, which obviously without that, everything else sort of falls apart. But even within quality, every origin, every region is different, and the bar for quality, it's not even like every coffee can be flat into one level, right? Every coffee has to fit a certain profile as well from a product perspective. But then the other thing that we have started to pay more attention to this year, and then definitely even more attention moving forward, is just repeat rate. So like buying the same micro lot year over year, that is not, it's more of a, you know, why would we not get the same one from last year, as opposed to should we get it, like it should be like a question of like, we're getting the same one, does it match all of our quality standards, our, you know, the time of arrival, and everything else. I think that's starting to become an important metric for us. A lot of other roasters do this, which I really think is really good, because it helps producers, importers have more certainty, especially with COVID. Everything is up in the air anyway. So this helps with like, okay, we know that this roaster will definitely buy this coffee if it matches up to, you know, these sort of published and known standards. I think the someone, I think maybe Sydney, you asked the question in the beginning, like, do you look for the story and then find the coffee, or do you find the coffee and then maybe there's a story? 100% we do not. Like, there's no point, in my opinion, to look for the story first and then the coffee, because that is just a recipe for building a beautiful story, but not may or may not be a beautiful coffee. So if there's no story, that may be it. Like, that's it. That's just something you have to live with. You can try really hard to make sure you understand whatever you can understand, but sometimes there is no story, and that's okay. Sometimes it's just the coffee, which I know it goes a little bit against TNT, but that's the reality of, like, sometimes it's the coffee, it's not the story. And there is a story, just sometimes you just don't know it.
I actually think that it is more in line with the principles of transparency and traceability. I couldn't agree with you more, Suya. Like, I think that, like, you need to let the coffee and the program lead the way so that you can build a sustainable program around it. And there's always a story to tell. It's like you can't have like a person without the context of their life, and if that's not, like, it may not fit into the box that many people want to put these kinds of stories into, of like, oh yeah, like this has been in her family for generations or whatever, like people
Yeah.
sometimes have these preconceptions of what story they want to tell. But it's like, the more that you listen to what the information has to tell you and what the people have to tell you, like, that's where the story is going to come from. It's got to be led by what's there, not
Yeah.
not your own perception of.
Yeah, we send these postcards with every coffee, and the number of times we have to put a generic, cherry ripening on a coffee shrub photo, just because we don't have any assets to share, and that's fine. That's just how it is for that coffee.
And it is transparency and traceability are strictly related to sustainability. Sustainability is the pillar that specialty coffee should move around, because it is ensuring stability for everyone. And when we step into the part of the conversation, when we talk about should I get these coffees and try this everything new, everything different, or should I try and buy different qualities from the same producer or from the same group of producers? Or should I try to buy consistently year after year from this producer? That is when we step into building a relationship, creating the relationship, supporting the relationship, and building trust. Because maybe we're not a huge company that can buy a lot of coffee and make change at once, but we can certainly impact the lives and the livelihood of the producers whom we're working with. And and thank you, Suya, to bring this into the table. Trying to buy consistently from the same producers year after year assures them and gives them the certainty that they are going to have someone to sell at least part of their coffee. And they're not going to be shifting and trying to look for someone that's willing to buy their coffee, that they know they have some certainty for part of the coffee that they have. And that is crucial to our industry. Remember that coffee is changing all the time, it's moving all the time, prices are changing all the time. So for a producer to have some certainty, at least from part of the coffee that he's going to deliver, that is a big change, and that is a big impact for a producer. Joanna, do you want to add something?
No, I'm just sitting, and everything I want to say is kind of being shared. Like, I think this is, yeah, it's very, very much like mature, if I put it that way. Like, I remember myself 10 years ago, and I was just trying to like, oh yeah, we're just gonna buy the very, very best coffees. I'm only buying coffees, you know, over 89. And then after a couple of years, it was like, okay, this is so boring. Like, it's not the same coffees. We don't know anything. And that's kind of when I looked myself in the mirror and were like, okay, I need to like actually go everywhere I'm buying. I need to cut down my portfolio brutally. And from being very much, you know, like only quality driven to try to get the same product year on year, for me, it's definitely been like a shift to supporting a person, having a relationship, investing in a relationship, and make sure to show up, like do your bit of the work, and to make sure that, you know, you buy that volume that you promise year on year. And of course, it's not as simple as that, but in many cases, even if it's structures in between that are changing in terms of exporter importers, like you can still use your power structure to still show up and find a way to make it work. And yeah, when you are 7-8 years in or 3 years in, like you hold another trust, and you can actually, like, that's when coffee are getting real. So, and in terms of criteria, like I'm still trying to buy coffees that are over, you know, 87. But yeah, do I have producers that have another coffee that, or some bit of the coffee producing in 84? And am I willing to, you know, find a place for that and work with that, you know, like, of course. So all of this, like, criteria, like the idea you have from the beginning, it's a lot of that shifting the more you learn. And I also believe a lot in the holistic approach. Like I try to hold it very black and white, like, okay, at least we don't do this. And I still have like a few of these when I try never to compromise of when it comes to children and schools. And but it's so like to see what in that specific situation. So yeah, like logging it, listening, being there, and that's what you can do. So
yeah, definitely, it is very important, and this comes along and joins the understanding how each country is different and how you should work in each country. And the next question goes to, how do you choose partners? When you have this focus of sustainability, transparency, traceability, and you know this criteria is very important for you in your company, how do you choose partners? Joanna, do you want to start?
yeah, sure. Like, it's so much beautiful coffee out there, and I wish I could buy so much more, but with you know, the limited volumes that I have, I currently can't buy everything. So no, but it's so much. Like, first of all, for me, it's important that I do visit, because that's something internally in my business where I. So I must be able to, like, I'm sure it's beautiful coffees in so many places where I haven't been or haven't had a chance to met the people, but that's a standard for me. And then otherwise, I mean, yeah, I've been to Hacienda La Esmeralda. Do I buy that coffee? No, I actually don't. Like, I try to see with the volume that I have and what buyer I am, where I can add a value and where actually we can build a relationship that's good. So, like, it's a lot of fantastic coffee out there where, yeah, like I couldn't make an impact. So for me, it's a lot about that. Like, where can I say, where is my business? Where's this person? What can we do together? Find somebody with a 5-hectare farm or a 10-hectare, or where you actually like work in another way on a bigger scale. But like, that's, yeah, how I choose my partners, and it's a lot about personality. Like it's often like your gut feel tell you in the first visit or a second, like if this is a match, are you sharing values? Do you have something to work on there? So it's more of about a person than a farm. And of course, like quality needs to be there too. But the decision in starting working together or not, that's a person you choose to work with, not a coffee bean, you know.
Exactly. So do you want to add to this?
Yeah, I think we have a bit of a different approach. Our business model with e-commerce, we have 4 different coffees every 4 weeks. So it changes very rapidly. The volumes are lower for each individual one. So we heavily rely on importers. We heavily rely on Caravela, Cafe Imports, all the usual suspects to share samples. Earlier it was spot, now it's mostly pre-ship, and just sort of moving a little bit earlier and earlier in the chain as we have gotten mature as well from our beginning days when I was roasting at home. So I don't have much more to say on this. We have visited a few farms, but we found that it's not sustainable, not practical. Keeping sustainability aside as a word, it's not practical for us to do it with what we do and how many coffees we buy. So we heavily rely on the supply chain and just sort of trust what they're doing, trust that they know what they're doing as much as we know what we're doing on our side.
And like so often, I just want to stress that, like, I mean, it's not better per se, that it's a lot of roasters with no education and less experience, like being out there and trying to do the work as good as somebody like as an importer or exporter can do. So I often feel like, yeah, I choose to do it this way, but it doesn't mean at all that's that's the per se where you can make the most impact. I think often an importer and exporter are the ones that are really capable. Like if you can trust them, they are better than most roasters.
This builds something that's very interesting, and depending on the country, you choose partners differently. So there are certain producers who you can purchase directly from because they are big enough to have their exporting licenses and to be able to ship the coffee. But there are some other parts of the world or some other parts of the same country where you cannot purchase the coffee directly from the producers. You need someone there or that's exporting the coffee or someone that's importing the coffee for you to rely on to create these relationships for you. So choosing partners comes in all shapes and sizes. It comes from choosing a producer who to work with, and it comes from choosing an exporter or maybe choosing an importer. And how do you build this trust to say that this is your partner and it's not going to be only one purchase and that's it? Because ideally, if you find a good partner, then you kind of want to buy from them from different origins or from different regions from the same country, because you share values, because you already know how they work, or because they have been fulfilling what they have been promising. So this is another side of the same coin on choosing partners. It is not as easy as you might think. Jamie, you want to share something here?
Yeah, I think that because partnerships tend to grow in coffee sourcing in this sort of expansive way through your network, I really try to hold every partner, whether it's a a farmer, a miller, someone in import, export, a purchasing agent, I really have the same things that I'm looking for when I'm choosing a partner in any of those fields. And it's really like attention to detail, good communication, the right mix of foundational skills and experimentation. It's got to like really fit the situation well. And then also a real drive for equity. Like it's got to be baked in to what they're doing. And the thing is, because, you know, depending on the sourcing model or the shape of the supply chain, things, no matter what, like things are going to grow out from the people that you surround yourself with. That's how, you know, a physical object gets moved, you know, across the world. So yeah, I really find that when I'm vetting the people who are closer to me in the supply chain by those same standards, they end up bringing me to people that share my same values in that way in other parts of the supply chain. And also, you know, like in certain situations, I kind of have to build the supply chain myself and say like, okay, like, you know, all right, I've met this person at this stage. Maybe it's a farmer or a purchasing agent or a consultant at some level, you know, and then we say like, okay, like, we want to get this coffee together. And yeah, you have to kind of fill in all the different parts. And because, you know, he and I share these core values, and I've vetted him through these tenets, like I can have, that's what inspires me to have confidence in the other pieces of the chain. And, you know, it's a process of iteration. Like, you know, you might work on it 1 year and it works great. You might work on it the next year and learn that, you know, you aren't on the same page on something. And, you know, it's important to be flexible to those changes, like, and not just be so rigid and like, I have to repeat this because I did the same thing last year. Like I found that, like, you know, I've had relationships where I was buying for, you know, 3 or 4 years, and to like the last 2, like we weren't on the same page. And so we decided to go our separate ways. And then others where it was like, you know, it came kind of out of nowhere. And then, you know, each year we built on the success of the last. And so, yeah, I think relying on your network, and also like really trying to look at it with fresh eyes every time. And like, am I really holding these people in these systems accountable? It's like you choose and then you have to keep choosing again and again.
It's like, no, you keep choosing it. You keep choosing your partner. So yes, this is very, very important, that you share the core values and that you can build on top of that. As you all have mentioned, the creation of this quality in the coffee, it's not just the quality, but it is, as Joanna said, it's not just the bean, it's the person behind it, who's making the effort, who's changing, who's trying, and who's striving. And having this moment to say, trust is so important, and you build up on trust. Maybe you did something wrong, but you let people know, or maybe they did something wrong, but they let you know. And when you have this environment of talking, explaining, this is a relationship, but it is also a business. And my core values and my core principles for the business are these. What are your core principles? What are your values? Do we actually match? Is what I'm saying, am I fulfilling what I'm saying? Are you fulfilling what you're saying? That is crucial to create a good and a strong value chain that's going to provide, and it's going to support producers, it's going to support exporters or importers, it's going to support you, and hopefully it's going to reach the end consumer in a way that they will be able to understand why it's important and why specialty coffee is so important for the livelihoods of the people that is working with it. I get excited. So, but I think it's something worth mentioning, because this is why we are here and this is why we're talking here, because this this topic is crucial to a good development for our industry. We don't just want to grow massively, we want to grow sustainable. So it is not just one day a huge company, but it is something that grew throughout time, and it grew with the producers. So the producers improved their livelihood, and they grew with you. Let's move on to the next question.
So I guess like this is the point where traceability and transparency really collides. And you, like every type of relationship, there's moments where you have to check in. And the question that is up next is, do you audit? And if so, how? And I'm curious, like, is this something that you audit when there's some discrepancy, or do you audit as a form of like relationship upkeep? So everyone has a clear like expectation and clear like understanding of the core values and how they may change over time. Suyog, would you like to answer this one first?
I knew you were going to call on me. I mean, officially, we don't audit, not like as an external agency coming in to verify what's going on. We definitely do some basic checks and balances. You know, we were supposed to get lot X. Does the bag match the lot that we received? You know, the bag marks add up, etc. Quality audit, there's always a little bit of discrepancy between pre-ship samples to arrival samples to production lots, but that's once you get into the habit of things, you know, you kind of know what to expect from one to the other. I would say we audit when we have issues, honestly. Like, that's not the best answer, to be honest, but it is the reality of where we are.
Yeah, and that's important. Remember that everyone is at a different stage, so understanding what's important for each, it's going to be helpful for people that's on the same stage. So the whole idea of this talk is to share different perspectives on this topic that might help people that is at the same stage that we all are.
I'll say that,
Oh, sorry.
Okay, Jamie.
Thank you. I'll say that, you know, often when people hear the term audit, they think like I'm coming to the farm with a checklist and like an independent auditor with me and like everything's happening. But, you know, like there is a lot of territory in between not doing anything and, you know, being like a flow certification or something. But yeah, I mean, something that's really simple, kind of like a yeah, duh answer, is just read the information that you get from the different people in your supply chain. If you get a traceability report, if you get a list of prices paid, you know, like read those spreadsheets, look at them, and just take the information in, like ask questions, you know, like look at it with a critical eye for 5 minutes. And if something doesn't make sense, like ask about it, you know? Sometimes you just caught a mistake. Salome's like, I hate when you do that, Jamie. No, Salome doesn't make mistakes, but
I do.
no, but yeah, that's a very simple thing to do. And also just like asking for the information. If you're not a buyer who can travel to origin or collect this information yourself, I mean, certainly like even buyers for some of the largest companies in the world that do independent auditing, like they can't visit every single farm that they buy from, especially if they're buying from communities. It's not possible. So like, you know, you just need to look at that information and also like see how people react when you ask them for that type of information. Like, do they have it on hand? Or do they not have it on hand, but they're willing to get it for you? You know, do you get some friction there? Like that's going to tell you a lot about your supply chain as well, not just having the information. And the other simple thing is that if you do have the opportunity to travel to origin, or even just to visit different parts of your supply chain, or to have them come visit you, like, just be a good listener, you know, keep your eyes and your ears open. You know, a lot of times I found that, you know, like the value of visiting a second or third time is not necessarily about like, okay, I gotta get all the data down so I can put it on my little fact sheet or whatever. It's just about like keeping, you know, it's about being there to have questions answered that I didn't even know that I had, you know, and you know, allowing a little bit of space for intuition, which is going to tell you a lot about the people that you're working with. And I mean, I have, you know, kind of, I've had experiences where I've been working with somebody and it's been going pretty well. And I visited them. There's one in particular. And, you know, some of the things that I saw and some of the interactions that I had on the farm, you know, I kind of just listed it in my head as a data point of like, something just doesn't seem to add up here. And, you know, when I came back to it later and combined it with some other information, I decided, you know, I don't think this relationship is right for my company. So, you know, like auditing doesn't, you know, there needs to be a basis in set criteria, but also, you know, it is about the relationship. So if you have a bad intuition about something, or if you know, have a bad feeling, then, you know, maybe don't make a split-second decision, but it's not nothing.
That's a very, very important point. It is something that I faced on a daily basis. Going to different places, to different farms, even different countries, and trying to find out who to work with is very important. First, the rule is always observe and listen. Observe, make mental like notes of things that you want to ask later. But observing and seeing if people actually fulfills what they're saying, or they're just talking and talking and talking, is very, very important. Usually at producing countries, we tend to be really, really good at talking, because we have this charm. But facing that against fulfilling is crucial. It is very, very important. Having excuses is really easy, but having excuses all of the time doesn't make sense. And if you are purchasing coffee, you can start just taking the data, taking the information. And when you take the time to analyze it, please do. It's very important that you do, because then you will find patterns. And you not only find patterns of, oh, this producer delivered to all of these coffees that I have. I want to give him the opportunity to have more of his coffee because it's so consistent, the quality is so good. But maybe you can find, oh, it is changing and changing and changing so much. Why is that? Like maybe because of the quality, maybe because of the region, or maybe because producers are not as happy with the payments or the people buying the coffee. Or maybe it is like a big amount of producers. Oh, now I understand, there's no problem with it. But if it is like 10 producers, but it changes and changes and changes and changes, maybe something's happening there. So seeing it with a critical eye is very important for you to start teaching yourself and creating these flags where you decide where you have to ask something or you have to re-evaluate the relationship or the partnership. Maybe you're partnering with an exporter or an importer, but then you realize that the quality is changing a lot. Then you ask, or you ask for the information, or you ask for the farm, or if you have the relationship directly with the coffee producer, you can have the information. Producers will share the information, especially if your relationship is with bigger producers. And it is tricky from place to place. I have seen, for example, some people buying from really big farms, and they think that the coffee comes just from that one farm. But it is very common for bigger farmers that they purchase coffee from neighbors. They purchase cherry or even green coffee or parchment coffee. That happens a lot in Central America. In Guatemala, it's like the regular thing. But because no one has asked for the information, they don't know, and they think that the coffee is coming just from one farm, but it's not. And it doesn't have anything wrong. You just need the information to know who you're buying from, what are you buying, and decide for yourself if that kind of purchasing adjust with your criteria and your principles and the way you want to impact on the coffee industry. Does anyone else have something to add?
How much time you got?
This topic is very, very interesting. And if you guys are interested in us continuing with the conversation and with more questions, please let us know and we will schedule another one to talk more about this. But let's move into the next question. Oh, sorry, my bad. Here it is. So what are the benefits for a company to implement transparency and traceability policies and principles? We do know that some companies implement this inside, but do not talk a lot about it. We know that we see some resiliency on the companies that have implemented this because they tend to be more organized. With their lineup, with their coffees, because they decided on how to purchase coffee earlier. They are more resilient to change. But do you guys have any benefits of having purchased coffee this way?
I think Suyag mentioned before that you know, it's just as much about building legitimacy and trust with your consumer base, because luckily, like, there is a measure of this sort of being expected now, but I don't necessarily think, at least in my market, that you know, people really know what to do with all of this information. So what I try to do is, you know, I try to respect the fact that they're looking for this for a signifier, and then hold up my part of the deal in actually making it real. You know, like, I don't really have consumers who are like wanting to audit me on my FOB prices or on my farm gate prices, but I do, you know, consider that information and store that information and try to communicate specific things when appropriate, because I feel like it's part of my job. So I'd say, like, the benefit to me of approaching sourcing in this way has been to build customer trust and to feel like I'm doing my part to sustain it.
Suya, Joanna?
Yeah, no, I can touch a bit on this and on the previous question. So say that, like, just like for Jamie, I find it a lot that I collect a lot of information and I do some audit, but what I do share is very different. And year after year, like, I get such a more like deeper understanding and deeper, like, you get a better picture in what I do think is important to share, like, not to underestimate the customers, but just like, whoa, this is really this is the deal. This is what we should talk about here. Here's what's important here. But for me, like, without working with transparency and traceability, it's essential. It's everything that's measuring how me and the producer or importer, exporter, like, how we are working together. So often for me, like, on a very first visit, when I go somewhere, and say if I go with you, Salome. Like it is like, I don't want to, like I can't come there as a, this like, yeah, one time buyer and show up and ask a lot of personal questions. Like the best thing I can do then is just to listen, and then after that I drop a million questions on you, or I do that before revisiting what I'm curious on, what I wish to understand. So, and then normally like after a year or two or even three, like I normally ask if the producer is comfortable in doing so I have impact report I've written up with somebody who actually has it as an education in import and export sustainability, in that within the UN, who have helped me to written up like what I should look for and what I should look for in the different countries, when I should flag something or not. And this is very personal information. Like they are fully welcome to say, no, I don't want to answer that, I don't want to share that. And if like they always know what I do share with an audience and what I do not share with an audience. But this takes a lot of trust to do. Like that's absolutely nothing I recommend to do on the first or a second visit with somebody new, to say, hey, can I ask you a million questions and I'm going to write it down and judge you on it. But it is important for me to get an understanding, and I do this like really simplify, where I say like I mark a red flag or a yellow flag or a green flag, and the year after, like we touch on that and we come back on the different topics. And that for me is like the way I can measure that we're working in a right direction. And then it can be like, yeah, you're never going to have a fully green spreadsheet, but at least you know where you are and you know what to work with. But that's far in, and I couldn't, like now I still have a few ones I haven't done it with, but I feel like I know them very well, but I would still like to do it, but I'm trying not to push to do it. But also I think that goes a lot with relationship, like when I visit in a country last time, I was really like, wow, it's so much like you're really struggling here, and this is a really tough situation, and like how did I not see this last year, and has it is the situation so much worse? And the answer I got is, no, we just know you better and we trust you more, so therefore they are willing to share more. So yeah, tying back to like the whole conversation, is like it definitely is an understanding that I think green coffee buyers or exporter has, that you can't share with everyone. But for me to understand what to prioritize, I couldn't work in another way, or at least that would have less value for me.
Yeah, so very, very important to realize that, and that's something you only build throughout time. Yeah. So you want to share on the benefits of implementing transparency and traceability, the consistency, the structure,
Yeah, I think definitely echo everything that Jamie and Joanna have said. I think, I would say from a benefit standpoint, for the consumer side of things, just to talk about that, not that the other side is not important, but just from the consumer side of things, what we try to do is we try to divide the information into sort of medium to high level, to like slightly deeper, to like all the access to all the information that we have, and present it in three different ways. We call it like paddle, swim, and dive, sort of a swimming analogy. And most people are just fine with the highest level of information, and that's it. You don't want to ignore those customers, but anybody that wants more has access to more and can really do their own sort of self audit of us in a way and ask us deeper questions and answer those. So I think like that just provides better engagement from the customer side, and then um, it's one of many benefits of transparency and traceability. Sometimes the information is not there, but I think majority of the times it's there, or we can ask the right questions of the um, everybody in the supply chain to get the answers.
Okay. Let's move into the last one. And well, this is going around, but would you say that is it definitely worth it to implement this inside of your company, your purchasing, and the way you work?
I can answer shortly. I would definitely say it is important somebody's doing it, but it's less relevant if it's our responsibility as buyers and taking in the product to do it. But per se, who is doing it is less important. And probably you, like as Caravela on the ground, is the most important because you can implement it on a more daily basis. So that you're doing it is highly important.
Do you guys have something to add? Would you say it has created this environment inside of your companies that helps you progress and thrive? Jamie?
Yeah, definitely. I think something that I value with my own team and that I also value with my collaborators in terms of farmers, people in the supply chain, all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's nothing like working together towards a high standard. So like, and it's also really fun and interesting, like if we didn't have problems to overcome, it would be so boring. It's like Joanna was saying, like, if just approaching it, thinking about the one thing, whether it's price or quality or, like trying to flatten the complexity of the whole thing is just, it takes away what's interesting about it. And so on a personal level, I feel like it's very fulfilling. And I think that what I would want most would be to create that type of environment as well for the people who want to come work with me. So yeah, I think it's absolutely worth it.
Hugh, you want to add? We can't hear you, your microphone.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, didn't click. 100% it is worth it. It's a challenge, and like Jamie said, that's why else would you work if something was not a challenge? It wouldn't be fulfilling on a personal level. I think it's also worth it from a industry standpoint. Specialty coffee growing as fast as it is still a very small component of coffee as a whole. um, Even like my own parents, like they don't particularly drink anything that's specialty. I probably don't even want to talk about what they drink, but um, the fact that they ask a question of me is enough for me to think that okay, it's starting to get into other people's minds and starting to get their attention a little bit, and then hopefully at some point down the line, maybe not tomorrow but maybe a few years from now, you know uh, they'll be asking the same questions of the products that they consume, of the coffee that they consume.
It is crucial uh, for our industry, for producers. It is crucial. Um, and I agree, it's not only that you are deciding to do it, but who is deciding to do it is also very important. And where is that person located in the industry? If we generalize this context, this topic into all of the layers of the coffee industry, we can generate change and impact faster. And that's the whole goal of this. Okay, we have some questions that I'll read to you guys. So, Suyok, this question is for you. Can you talk about your farmer feedback program, as that is a level of transparency that shares consumer feedback with farmers? How do they receive that information?
Yeah, we've this just to give a little bit of information about the program itself. Basically, since all of our consumers have digital, like online interactions with us, no shops, no physical contact as such. We collect a lot of ratings and reviews of every single coffee that we ship to consumers' homes, and we basically collect that, we collate it into a report, and then we share it back. Honestly, we were very good about it a year or so ago. Lately, we've tried to revise the program and restart it in a way, and um, and then and then share it back through Caravela, back with as far back as we can go in the supply chain, with the farmers ideally, so that they, in the worst case, it's just going to be information that they'll use or they'll just sort of see and hopefully feel good about. And in the best case, it'll be helpful for planning for the future. So that's the intention behind it. Unfortunately, it's been a little bit stop and go because of some technical issues and some other reasons. But we're planning to sort of rework it, maybe do some improvements as well while we restart it. But that's the intention.
Yeah, and it's a really nice spot because it is very important. Um, and we have talked about this, that the information goes both ways. The communication and the information going down to the coffee producer and going up to you throughout the whole chain is very important. Transparency and traceability is something that you should be worried about, not only if you're a roaster or a green coffee buyer, but as a coffee producer, as an exporter, as an importer. That is something I should be very concerned. We often talk about transparency and traceability going the information to the roaster or the green coffee buyer, but we often, as an industry, forget that the information should also go to the producer who is providing the raw material, the main product, who we all work with. Oh, we have another question. So, Matthew, Suyong mentioned that he has a list of specifications for each coffee available to the public. Where can we find this?
I think I mentioned two components. One is just every coffee that we purchase and roast, we have a web page for it, so you can find it on driftaway.coffee/coffees, and each one has a short story video about, origin explainer video, and then there's a whole bunch of transparency and traceability information on each one. I'm not sure if that's the component that Matt's asking about, but separately from a green buying perspective, we have a blog post that we published a couple of years ago, and I don't think it's changed much, where we list out essentially the criteria that we use to source every single coffee in each of our 4 profiles. So I think you can just Google that.
Okay, then we have a very interesting question for you guys to answer. Would you consider larger lots blended from different farmers that can be exported at lower price as less important or worthy because they aren't as traceable as small lots from individual farmers?
I'll answer this one. Oh, you first, Joanna.
No, I think it's so up to the like the buyer, what they are looking for, and like what it's definitely like a model working, if that's the question. Like say I know Caravela is doing this, for example, like they are doing like collecting coffee from many different farmers, putting it together to a certain taste profile so the customer knows what they're getting. And that does not mean that they can't work on the ground, like impacting as deep and as meaningful as with the coffee set separately. So I would say, yeah, it may be like easier if it's, say, like one buyer, one farmer, and we can work like that. But the added value on how much an exporter can work on the ground with a group like that is absolutely beautiful, like both for the customers, but also the group of people that you're putting together.
Yes. Jamie, do you want to add on that?
Yeah, I would say, Hauke, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, that actually these types of projects are really more core to our program than the small lots from individual farmers. I think that like at a certain point, if you want to deliver a coffee that's at a relatively large volume that's consistent, it actually works a lot better for us to work with a group of farmers and to try to build a consistent community lot year on year. And actually, in the cases where we have more in-depth relationships, like for example, Caravela has helped us build a fixed price group in Bruxelles and Willa. To this extent, it's like, we're getting the information from each farmer that composes the larger lot. So I don't necessarily have, I can contact them, but I'm not like, in close contact with every single farmer on this list. But it's critical for me to have this copy that's compiled of their blend, and I do have the information about each specific person that I can audit and communicate with. Like, I really feel like these types of lots are where the best work in traceability and transparency is being done. And they're also very difficult to create, but they're absolutely like that's where the best work is being done. Where the most sustainable work is being done, I feel.
Okay, so I want to add there that you have blended lots doesn't mean that you won't have traceability. It is actually when you have those blended lots where you need more traceability, because you need to track down, see the information, see the producers, see the prices. Often when you're working with smaller groups of producers or in different regions of certain countries, you will find that there are a lot of small producers. So if you were going to buy it from each one, you will end up buying 2 bags, 1 bag, 3 bags, 4 bags, 2 bags. But sometimes you need a lot that's 20 or 50 bags or even 10 bags. And for that means you would need to create blends from different producers. And you should definitely get the traceability there. And what defines the price of the coffee is more related to the quality of the coffee itself, on the scale of this coffee is amazing, this coffee is good, this coffee works for this or for this, but not that the coffee is blended or not. Because if the quality is there, the compensation for the effort should be there as well. Hope we answered your question. Okay, we have. Okay, Jamie already answered that one, and Joanna. So Andres said, Joanna mentioned the holistic approach, not only buying the top qualities, but also the lower specialty coffees. What do you do with the still great coffees, but maybe 82, 84?
I think there's there is a market for every coffee. Like I buy very little of that in my personal roastery, but it's like it is a market for that. I've started to find like more places that I can roast for, where I actually can buy that market, but that's something I need to work actively with. Or otherwise, I mean, I do have a branch colleague in Sweden that may be able to buy it, or like there is always a market for that coffee. And of course, it's like working with the higher specialty you work with, like of course depending on volume, but like yeah, you can get better paid. So normally it's a strive to like make that less and less every year. But there is a market for it, and I think if you are committing to like buying all the coffee from a 5-hectare farm, you know it's going to be some that may not be able to be sold on the local market, and you want to do that. So absolutely, like don't be too snobbish. I'm still working with me, but yeah, there's definitely markets for it, and you normally have channels that are not so far away. Some we have done like staff coffee to a Michelin star restaurant who wanted to, you know, have a coffee like that, but roasted well. Now we're still talking 82, 84, like that. That's a great coffee, but yeah, it's definitely a market for everything, and you as a buyer should take responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah, and if we take into account that producer has different quality tires, but as a roastery, if you are able not only to purchase that and support a producer, but open up different businesses and partnerships for those coffees, you are more resilient throughout time because you are more diversified as a roaster. And maybe one of the avenues where you were supplying coffee does no longer purchase from you. You have other avenues where you can still selling that coffee, and it's going to be more resilient for you at your company to do something like this.
I like to leave this, like for me, a really effective strategy has been, so I kind of think of our buying program in like 3 tiers. The middle tier is like the heart of what we do. So it's like we're retail first business mostly. We have 10 cafes. So it's really like the core of what we use in those cafes is this center tier. And then we have kind of like the higher end, that's like the really exotic experimental stuff that's more about like teaching people about the diversity of flavor. And then we have kind of our lower tier that's like really just a clean quality coffee that would be appropriate for like a restaurant or a hotel. And it's not really important exactly where the cup scores lie. It's just that there's a differentiation between them. So what I like to do is I really focus on most of my attention on buying that middle tier, and I kind of leave the, you know, lower tier a little bit more flexible because my criteria are a little bit more you know, a little bit more flexible there as well, so that if I have a partner who has a bad year and their quality score is lower, or if I want to be able to buy you know, a lower quality from the same person, then I like to put it in that place, and I always have a place for that flexibility and risk management so that I can continue to buy from people even when, you know, something doesn't go exactly perfect, because things never do. So
I would also just like to add that is so like buying, like it's not like it's very few of us that has an audience that are buying, you know, like infinity much many high-end gesture coffee only. So like, and that's also so much money, like managing those micro lots and all of the work and the expectations that the producers are putting into those coffees, like they cost so much. And that's also like, it's easy to say, like it's both sides of the coins. It's both, it's like, okay, but buying it's an effort to buy the lower end, but it also is a massive effort to buy the really high end often.
Yeah, and when we see this for a roaster, it's very similar to a producer. So the cost of production will change depending on the quality as well. Sometimes it doesn't change massively, and in some other places, the cost of production is drastically different. And it is important for a producer to have a customer, not only one, it can be 3, 4, 5, or many more, that are buying different quality tires from him or her, because they need this flexibility that they are selling this quality here, or this person is buying different qualities. That brings stability for them. The same way it brings stability for a roaster to be able to use the coffee differently and to be able to adjust the budget to support producers. So when you look the one side by side, it's very similar. And sometimes we don't realize how important it is till we are on the place where we see ourselves. Oh, I need to diversify this. I need to change this a little bit. And then you go to ask the producer, or you ask your exporting or importing partner, and their answer will be, oh, that's great. It is better for us to know that you will need these different qualities, or that I will have this specific coffee moving certain way. So it makes it more sustainable. And that conversation is very important. If you haven't had that conversation with your coffee provider, be it a producer, an exporter, or an importer, do it and you will see what we're talking about. It's very, very impressive when you're in that position and you realize that it is actually better for everyone in the supply chain to purchase coffee this way. So everyone, if you have questions, let us know. Thank you for participating. Thank you, Jamie, Joanna, Suyog. It was really, really nice talking to you. Always thankful to Sydney. You're going to see more of her in the upcoming webinars. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Oh,
thanks for inviting
Thanks,
us, and
everyone.
thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot.
Goodbye.